Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews, a podcast where we take a look at movies from our past and ask the question, are they any good? We're in sequel season, and last week Chris left our fate up to the gods. He spanned that wheel to determine what film we would review next, because it was quite a limited list, because for those who don't know, sequel season means we're just doing sequels to films we've already reviewed. So the list of films was longer than we thought, but also not massive and unwieldable. It was like, I think it was like 20 or 30 films total that we could have selected from for this season. And Chris pumped a handful of them into a random wheel generator, and we ended up with Dr. Dolittle 2, which we had both said prior to spinning the wheel was the one on the list we were least interested in covering. So would anyone like to hear the results of two grown men talking about a film they already admitted they didn't particularly want to discuss? Because that's what this is this week.
It is. I mean, the one thing about the wheel, I have to say, and you know, also,
I love the wheel.
Welcome to what is potentially going to be the shortest episode of Rewind Reviews ever, because you know there's not much you can stretch out with Dr. Dolittle 2. But the thing about it though is, you know, that I don't think there's any way this movie would get picked otherwise. You know, if it weren't for sequel seasons, if it weren't for spinning the wheel. I do have an interesting story about it, which I'll say in a minute. And
is
I
it
don't
possible
know if I'm repeating myself?
Is it possible you already told this story when you talked about the first one? Because you did say on the first one that this was technically the first DVD you owned.
So it was a double box set basically.
Yeah.
I'll come back to that. So I do think it's, you know, it's fun that this movie got picked. Because this movie got picked, there's a real randomness to it. So now part of me is like, the odds of Dr. Dolittle 3 also being chosen have now shot up. Because it's like, well, we've done the first two. No review podcast about old movies has ever done all the Dr. Dolittle movies.
No, but I suspect, I'll be honest with you, after doing this one, Chris, I'm quite happy to let Dolittle 3 sit for a season or two and come back to it at a later date. I was looking. The first one we covered, it was episode 35, I think. And as we now approach 100 episodes of Rewind Reviews, it is kind of insane to look back at like what we've covered and when. Like, 34. No, 33. Sorry, I found it. 33. And ironically, we did it in the same season we covered the Star Wars movies and Dumb and Dumber.
Oh, well, there you go. I don't know. I'll make it super quick. It was the first DVD I ever owned, and the thing about it is my mum and dad chose to get me a DVD player quite last minute. They were they knew I wanted one, but they were more expensive than they thought. But then I think a deal came up which meant they could get a DVD player for much cheaper than they thought. Or it was like a combi maybe even. No, it wasn't a combi. No, but it was basically it was cheaper than they thought it would be. So they got a DVD player, but they'd already purchased a load of VHSs. So I just got the Dr. Dolittle box set, and it was awesome that I got a DVD player. I was very thrilled about that. But the amusing thing was, it meant I only had one DVD with it, or two DVDs. Dr. Dolittle 1 and Dr. Dolittle 2. I'd already seen Dr. Dolittle, so like this film, Dr. Dolittle is kind of technically, it was a box set, the first film I ever owned on DVD, but Dr. Dolittle 2 would be the first film that I sort of, the first DVD of my own that I watched, which means I think I watched this. I can't remember any of the details from it. I'm pretty sure I watched this film with the commentary on. I watched I meant to look it up before we started, all the extra features. Like, I really engaged with this DVD because it was the only one I had that I hadn't already seen. So yeah, that's my history. You've not seen it, I assume.
No, I'd seen it. Yeah. I back in the day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We talked about this when we did the first one. So we told that story. You because I think you said as well that a lot of your gifts that year were VHSs because no one expected you to get the DVD player. If memory serves.
Yeah.
Like your parents they'd even set you up for a look. This ain't like we can't like afford it or whatever. It's too expensive. It's not going to happen. So just don't get your hopes up. DVD player, unfortunately, not on the cards this year. And apparently they told all your family that, because from the story on the first one, you sort of expressed, you know, you got a lot of VHSs the year you received your DVD player for Christmas, which is quite a funny story. But yeah, no, we talked about it, because when we talked about the first one, when we discussed the first movie, we talked a lot about whether they needed both children. Because in the first movie, the younger daughter is like the relevant player, and the older daughter, Raven Simone's character, just sort of exists. She's there to be the slightly older, snottier teenager. And we questioned her need in the movie, and the one thing we sort of said that was like, well, did they know they were doing a sequel? Like, did they sort of, because was there a part of them going like, if this does well, we could do a couple of these? Because the way they set her up in the first one really complements what's happened here. Now, the conclusion we came to, if memory serves, was no. that they could not have possibly known they were going to do a sequel to that movie, and she was the superfluous character in that movie as it stood. But a lucky break, because it allowed them to explore the other daughter that they didn't in this one, which is great. Because she's the much more interesting character to do this storyline with than the younger daughter. But the consequence of that is this movie has me also asking the question, did they need two children? Because the second daughter, the daughter that was the more relevant daughter to the story in the first one, pretty much might as well not be in this movie.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure she's the one. I've not seen it, but I think she's the one that then carries through and appears in all the others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's the remaining cast member, and I believe the actress that plays the mum sticks around as well.
I've just looked it up. There is an audio commentary, extended scenes, for features, such as a feature that goes into the bear, the making of the bear, storyboard to film comparisons, a music video, and 2 trailers, and I'm pretty sure I've seen all of those.
Yeah, I'll bet. Those early days of DVDs, you did literally explore every inch of the DVD. Like, I remember one of the first DVDs I got was, I think it was a Blair Witch DVD, Blair Witch Project DVD, and I remember, like, because a lot of the extras were like the fake viral news clips they put out, I believe. You know, like the news articles they put out to make it look like those 3 teenagers really had gone missing or whatever. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, it was an interesting time. I remember also getting hold of the Matrix DVD the first time, blitzing all the special features on that. Yeah. I should warn listeners, just in case. The place I'm staying at the moment has a bird feeding table, and it gets visited by Australia's noisiest bird, the cockatoo. And you would not believe how loud these things are. Like, genuinely, audio levels hitherto unfathomed by humankind, the cockatoo. And every day at around 5 o'clock, which is about an hour ago now, a couple will land, screech until I bring out some seed, and then wait till I leave to come down to then eat it. They won't come near it while I'm anywhere near it. They want the seed, but they don't want me. And even though it's 6 o'clock now, sometimes like a couple of latecomers will show up and then screech. So if that happens, I do apologize. Currently, I am cockatoo free. I can see from here, but it's just a heads up because it is so loud. There is literally zero chance if they do it outside this window, you won't hear it, and it will sound like a banshee. It's a frightening, sudden, loud sound. The other day, Nadia and I went on like a hike, and we were in the woods, and we were doing like a trail along a river, and we were sort of like edging our way along quite a precarious part of the river, the rocks that were the actual edge of the bed. So like, you know, I'm not great with heights, and I wasn't particularly high up, but I was high up enough that I was like slightly just being overly cautious with my steps over the rocks as we got back to the path. And one of these fucking things screeched, and I jumped out my skin, and I swear to God, I nearly went straight in the river. It would not have been pretty. But they are so loud and very sudden. So that's just in case that happens for listeners. Speaking of animals, Chris, and loving the animals, I will say, right, let's just do headline thoughts. I think A Sequels Go is a pretty solid one. I think it's doing everything
I agree with that.
A sequel to Dr. Dolittle should be doing, right? It's got a bit of family drama. It's got a bunch of animal stuff. It's got a pretty straightforward plot line. It's an evolution from the original, but not so far from the original. The tone is there. We can have a chat about quality and dip in that later. But I think on the whole, if you were going to pencil me out a sequel to a movie, it's a pretty safe, honest, functional way to do it. And there is pretty much, at least on the surface, with the ideas at work here, there's literally nothing wrong with this choice of plot, this use of these characters, this extension of the world. It all makes perfect sense. It feels unique enough from the original, but without being straying too far. It's a really nice balance, and I actually think they did a pretty good job sort of crafting what this movie was going to be. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair, for sure.
Yeah. Because it's like a simpler plot, right? Because the first one has a lot of plates it's spinning. Because in the first one, he's got his daughter issues because he's treating her the way his dad treated him. So there's a whole bunch of like passed on trauma stuff. Because he's terrible with his kids because it was a 90s movie. This one breached into the 2000s. So he's less of a shitty dad. But, that 90s movie thing where all the dads had to be like at the office too much. Tim Allen, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all these like comedy dads they had to be the shittiest fathers first, and then they could learn a lesson. This movie doesn't have that burden, but the first one had that going on, but it also had like he's learning about his abilities, but then there's the whole plot with the tiger that needs the surgery, and because he's a doctor, he's the only one who can help it, and like. And there's Lucky, who's like a stray, and like there's just so many plots. Oh, the wife doesn't believe that he can touch the animals. Then he gets committed to an institution. But there's also this whole plot line about a big deal that his doctor clinic is making that's going to make him rich, but take him away from his patients. Like it's juggling way too much. That first movie. That movie is so much going on in it. And when you look at this one and you go, "What's the plot?" and it's like, "Oh, he's helping." To save a part of the woods by getting two endangered bears together. And
it's simple.
And then he's like, oh, and his daughter is like got some, there's some drama with his daughter. That's it. That's the movie.
Yeah, but even some of the drama with his daughter is it's like, oh, he's struggling with his daughter's boyfriend until that character gets forgotten about. But
where does that guy go? Did that guy get mauled by a bear? Like secretly, like
he's there at the end. Like he's
he?
there at the end when
Okay.
they do the protest. So he stays in the film, but they just forget that he was annoyed with him. But I could not believe how simple it was. Like it doesn't even like there's no real there is a subplot because of the daughter plot, but it's really easy, and I mean that as a compliment. Like I say, in some cases, the boyfriend character disappears, and like the story with the bears is she's not into him, and then a scene later she is. But having said that, I thought it was really easy watching.
Yes.
I really enjoyed its simplicity.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think the simplicity is a bad thing, because I just think, like, do one thing reasonably well. Don't try to do 20 things cleverly and get it, because you're not that kind of movie. Like, the quality is already questionable. Like, it's not a great film, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But like, let's not overstretch. Do you know what I mean? Let's just do something simple and do it as well as we're able to. And I think that's very admirable. And I really respect what they did with it. So yeah, I would say if we're doing just overall thoughts, I think it's a simpler plot. It doesn't have a lot to say, but it's still kind of fun. Eddie Murphy's still very sort of charismatic in the role. The rest of the cast are great too. Bunch of fun guest stars for the animals, and some yucks. But I will say the biggest criticism I have of this movie is the hit ratio of the yucks is lower by, I would say, a quarter, because I think we said in the first one, like the jokes are very hit and miss, because there seem to be like, this joke's aimed at children, so it's like a slapstick fart joke. This joke's aimed at adults, so it's like a wordy like joke. And it's like trying to balance the two. And we were like, the hit rate on the jokes this movie is about 50%, I think, is what we kind of came to the conclusion. I don't think we framed it in a percentage, but we were like, sort of half of them work. I think if we were using that framework again, I would say this time it's like 25% of the jokes work, which is bad. That is poor. That's like the film's biggest like offense, like in my book, to be honest with you. I don't know. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, there was some that made me laugh. There was some witty dialogue. There's one scene in particular that suffers from like fart gag humor.
Yep.
Literally, a bear getting the runs happens in this movie. Although,
and then that's followed up by a lot
watching...
of like, oh, it smells jokes, which is
but some of that because Eddie Murphy is still brilliant. And I don't know if it's because I was watching it late at night, but even some of the fart stuff made me laugh. The bit where he goes, basically the plot is the bear's eating too much ice cream, and he's got the runs as a result. And there's a bit where Eddie Murphy goes, "Ice cream? That's not just ice cream." Again, I've butchered the delivery because I suddenly realised I can't do impressions, let alone a comic genius Eddie Murphy. But yeah, he basically says that's not just ice cream, and that really made me laugh. I can't help it.
Yeah. Because I think what's great about like the way this works is like, you do a movie like this with a star like Eddie Murphy, who is so charismatic and can deliver these lines and just nail it with such ease. You almost go like it's that old thing from SNL when they had Keenan on as a regular cast member, and they would sometimes say that when you were writing a script and you didn't think you had enough good jokes for a sketch, you could just write, Keenan pulls a face. And that's an extra laugh you're going to get because your actor is so good, right? And referring to Keenan Thompson. And I think there's a truth to that here. Like, Eddie Murphy is so naturally funny. Obviously his early sets not all aged very well, but like I think he'd be remiss even if problematic content aside, like he's clearly a very talented performer. And actually my history with this franchise was disappointment in the first Dr. Dolittle because I grew up on a diet because my dad was a huge fan of Eddie Murphy. I grew up on a diet of Golden Child, Coming to America, Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop. Eddie Murphy's like absolute best work in film. And then, this movie comes out and I'm excited, and because it's a family movie with Eddie, I can go and see it I could go see it. Well, the first one I should say, I can go see it in like a cinema. Like I could, you know what I mean? Like it's for me. And, I don't have to wait till it comes out on like a VHS and like convince my parents to show it to me. And I just remember the disappointment of the first one just based on my love of Eddie Murphy and it not really living up to that. And I don't think I would have known that's what I didn't care for at the time. But I was, even as a kid, I didn't love the Dr. Dolittle films. So this is one I waited for. I saw it on like VHS, year or so after it came out. And again, probably was just like, yeah, that's fine. Because like that's how I felt about the first one. But I remember being disappointed. But I think that's a real, again, a testament to, as you were getting at, like Eddie is so fucking good at delivering even bad jokes that like there's something about the way he performs and the way he delivers dialogue that's just so charming, pulls you in. So yeah, it's really, really good. He definitely sells more of the jokes than the script does, if so to speak. But like, yeah, he's definitely one of the movie's best assets, which is why I'm slightly scared of ever getting to Dr. Dolittle 3. Because I think if you remove even that, then I really do think I was gonna watch the trailer because I have no idea what happens in Dr. Dolittle 3. I've never seen Dr. Dolittle 3.
No, I just know it's about the youngest daughter. I just know
Yes.
the other three films because there's 5 of them. The other 3 films center around the daughter. I just know that.
Yeah, the youngest daughter, the one that like is more engaged with it. I guess she gets the power in the end too, right?
I assume so, yeah.
Yeah. Like when
So
she
how do you
turns-
feel? How do you feel they handle then? And we've gone straight into spoilers, but well, like you say, you did give a good summary of.
Yeah, I would
well,
say
does that
I
mean
guess I
it's a
would
pleasant
recommend.
watch?
Would I recommend it? Yeah, I guess so. It's fun.
I
There's,
would.
there's nothing. It's light. It's easy. It's breezy. It's an hour and a half. It's gone before you know it. You won't be angry at giving it your time. Is how I would phrase it.
No, and I think there are some funny moments in there, and I think there's some good heart in there as well. I think it's a really easy to watch. I think it's an easier watch and more of a family movie than the first one. To be honest, like for the reasons you've said about. What did you think? Because obviously the big emotional heart of it is the relationship with what's going on with the older daughter, which you can tell something's bothering her. You can guess, I think, even if you don't know, you guess it as an audience pretty quickly from her reaction to things. But eventually it's revealed that she can also hear the animals, and she's been dealing with that and not wanting to feel like a freak and stuff like that. How do you feel they handled that whole plot?
Very quickly, just because I don't know if I'll get another chance to talk about this. I had no idea there were 5 of these, and I've just looked up the 2 others, and like, fuck me. Like, one's called Dr. Dolittle, Tale to the Chief, and it appears to be a young Dr. Dolittle Jr. goes to the White House. And then the final one is called Dr. Dolittle $1 Million Mutts, and the box art doesn't even include Maya Dolittle on the cover. But she's in it. She's still the titular Dolittle of that movie, but she's not on the cover at all. It's just Lucky with his head out of a car wearing sunglasses, and it says Lucky goes to Hollywood.
Yep. Yep, those are the other movies.
That's insane. I did not know these had gone the way of Nativity. Like $1 Million Mutts and Tale to the Chief really does, does ring true.
See, don't you want to do those movies now? Now that you know one of them is called Tale to the Chief. I mean,
well, we have to do it now. I think if we do another sequel season, this is the trilogy. We do the.
Oh yes.
We do the.
I'm down for that.
We do the Maya Dolittle trilogy. Although, to be fair, it might be better to spread those out, because actually that might be a quick way to get very, very bitter tastes in our mouths to do them all back to back. But, admittedly...
I love that you didn't know that. I'm so glad that we got to hear you discovering there were 5 of these movies.
I feel like I might have known there was at least one more straight-to-DVD one after 3, but like I didn't know what it was called. I wasn't sure if she was in it or if it was just a real like low-effort, like... Disney Channel thing that never went, and you know what I mean, like I didn't even know if she was in it. So to find out she did a trilogy as the lead, even though the cover of the 3rd one would very much have you believe that Lucky is the star, Norm Macdonald of course reprising his role in all of these, because that is an easy paycheck in it. As Stephen Merchant once described voiceover work, money for old rope.
Yeah, I did see on Wikipedia they're the only 2 that were in all 5 films.
Right, yeah. But I do think some of the cast go through to at least the 3rd. Like I believe from my previous research, I think the 3rd one does still have Kristen Wilson, who plays Lisa Doolittle, the mum. So I do believe she's still in the 3rd. I've not looked that up since, but yeah, because these are owned by Fox, there was a part of me that was just like, I kind of had some awareness. But Jesus Christ. Right, back to the question you asked, because that really threw me. Yeah, I think the best part of this movie is what they do with. I've forgotten the character's name. That's never a good sign, is it? I'm trying to say it's the best part of the movie, and I can't remember the character's name. Let's find it, because it's going to bother me. Charisse. So, Charisse Doolittle was the aloof teenager character in the first one. Not a lot to do as a character. She was kind of just there. In this movie, she inherits this role of being sort of embarrassed by her dad, sort of sees him as a little bit as a freak, but I think it's rooted in her own sort of self-hatred, because she starts to hear the animals, and the movie does such a good job hinting that that's the case without revealing it, like to where you go like a child would feel clever working this out. Like there's a scene when she's talking to the other sister, the younger sister, and I think like a squirrel or like maybe the chameleon makes a comment, and then she says something that is so cleverly written it could either be just her making an exclamation to nothing or a response to what she's just heard. And it's really, really well done. Because I think if you go into the movie knowing, you definitely know that's what that is. But if you don't, you could probably use that as a good clue and go, oh, I wonder if... Did she hear that? It felt like she might have heard that. And I feel like, maybe not for an adult, but for a child, like a little mystery to solve. I think that's great. Lovely. And the breadcrumbs are there. And of course, the strength of the first movie, or one of the better elements of the first movie, was the way it looked at this idea of hurt people. That the dad had Dr. John Dolittle, Eddie Murphy Dolittle, he was not treated well by his dad in his youth for his weirdness and his talking to the animals. And he almost beat it out of him. Like not in so many words, but he was really mistreated. And then he was doing the same dismissive stuff with his daughter in the sequel, and it took his dad to be like, hey, I made this mistake, don't make this mistake, be a better parent. And that was a really powerful, family story to underpin the hijinks. This movie needed that, I think, and it got that through that. Did it explore it in as much detail as it could have done? No, of course fucking not. It's Dr. Dolittle too. No, I did not. 25% of the jokes work. What do you think? It's not a great script, but it is like a really solid script in that like it does do what it needs to do to make that story there and function, and it is the heart of the movie. And I think it's a really it's a surprisingly well laid out story that makes perfect sense. The characters' arcs work. There's just enough going on so when they change, you don't think it's completely out of nowhere. They don't do enough really to completely sell you on the character shifts, but they do enough that there's not nothing. Unlike the bears, which I'm going to ask you about in a second, Chris, because I'm very curious because I found the bear thing to be just like, oh, now they're in love, and I know you're our resident love guy, so I want to get your opinions on that as well. But like, on the whole, for me, it was honestly my favorite part of this movie was that relationship between those two characters and that story. And I thought it played out brilliantly. And I think it played out subtler than they were even intending it to. Like maybe even by accident, just on the grounds that like they were like, oh, we're going to fit in more fart jokes. Let's cut some of the more deep father-daughter stuff. Won't that make it a little bit more subtle? Yeah, I guess as a side effect, sure. Like... that's how it feels sometimes, like they got there by accident, but it does genuinely work. And I really like their relationship, and it helps that obviously two of the most, two of the actors from this franchise that have gone on to be the most successful. Obviously, I say gone on. Eddie Murphy started this franchise as a star, but Raven Simone obviously went on to be So Raven. Just 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so that wasn't already that. Okay, so that was after.
Yeah, so I got this wrong. I think the first podcast because I said she was already established, and then you Googled it and corrected me if my memory serves me right. Whereas, so I think I don't think That's So Raven starts until 2004. It's like 3 years after this. I think I should Google that though, shouldn't I? And make sure that we're not crazy. Because I am going off memory of a podcast we recorded in 2021.
No, I'm sure that's right.
I'm gonna check. That's So Raven. Oh no, 2003. I wasn't far off. I was a year off. But yeah, so she doesn't do That's So Raven for like 2 to 3 more years. So like, it's not a shocker that the story that carries the most heart and has the two probably best performers of the live action actors in the movie, obviously not including the voice talent. Like of the people who are physically in this movie, they're two of the most talented. And getting to see them bounce off each other a bunch is really fun.
I think that's fair. I think they're also given given them most to all the
Yes.
best stuff to do. Like it's a good performance from the actress playing his wife. I can't remember her name, but that's a good performance. Kevin Pollak is great, and given a very a solid Kevin Pollak performance, which I don't mean as an insult. Like that's what he was hired to do in this movie, and he does it brilliantly.
Yeah.
So I think everyone's good.
Yeah, and even like small roles, like like James Avery plays a really funny, like he has a small role, like a really like he's on the end of a phone for like 20 seconds and he's not in the movie again, but he's brilliant in that moment. So yeah, there's a bunch of really great actors in this movie. Don't get me wrong. It's just like when you're doing that cross section of like talent and also like how much the movie gives them to do. By far the standouts with what you're looking at is for sure Eddie Murphy and Raven Simone. And again, no disrespect to Kyla Pratt or Kristen Wilson, who play the other members of the family, and certainly, I mean, I think it's a different job. The people who are coming in to do the animal voices will come to that. That's also a good fun cast. We'll talk about Well, let's talk about the best stuff, because I feel like I've ranted a lot now, because I said a bunch of stuff and then you asked me a question. So let's switch to you, and then we'll do best stuff.
I agree with you, everything you just said about the storyline between Eddie and Raven. I think, like you say, the fact that he's so kind and warm. And just like the acting in the scene where, and at this point she doesn't even tell him, but when he's like, "Is something going on? You can tell me. You can tell me. You can tell me." And then he walks away, and she's like, "Dad," and he comes back, and he's like, "Yes, tell me." Like it's such sweet, good acting. Like it's really strong performance. So I echo everything you just said on that. I think it is the highlight of the movie. And like you say, I don't want to just repeat a load of stuff you said, but the way it is guessable for kids is brilliant. Like especially with that scene with the chameleon, lizard, whatever it is.
Yeah, I can't remember which animal it is, but like one of the animals says something, and she like replies. Like, but what she says is like really carefully worded, so it could just be like an exclamation to no one, like to just a general utterance.
Or I think her sister has just said something, so it could be a response to her sister. I think the only weird thing, the only frustrating thing is as we indicated earlier, they set up a boyfriend element. They set up a boyfriend that he doesn't get on with, and again, that actor's very good, and the chemistry between him and Eddie, when he arrives and he calls him Pops and stuff. I can't remember, but also you got to bear in mind with that kid, like... He's coming on set and he's got to play a role that's like antagonising to Eddie Murphy. That's got to be nerve-wracking. And he doesn't already know him. He wasn't in the first film. And like I say, the scene where he pushes past him and he's like Pops, and the scene where he's like, "Oh, don't worry, I can relax her. Don't worry about it." Oh, I really like the gag, and it's just an example of just a really simple but like, I don't know, just good family movie gag when he's like, "Did no one teach you to take your hat off at the dinner table?" And then he takes his hat off and he's wearing like a bandana or like another hat thing underneath that you expect him to then tell him to take off as well.
So that actor is credited as Lil Zane. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know if I've seen him in anything since, but he is brilliant in this. Okay, so the director of this movie worked with that actor first a year earlier on a movie called Next Friday. So he just worked with him on that, liked him enough to bring him across. Apparently he appears in an episode of Atlanta.
Right.
So I don't know. But I'm with you. He was considering this was his second ever movie. Maybe third. Like it's pretty impressive that he was just like out the gate, just able to go toe to toe with Eddie Murphy in a way that felt really like, and maybe that's just that cockiness of youth. Maybe he just didn't see it as a, do you know what I mean? Like maybe that was just purely like, that when you're young enough to not question what you're doing constantly and be constantly sort of judging your own performance and stuff, like you just got that freedom of like no self-doubt to ruin your day. Maybe that's all it is, but it works really well. I mean, he's very happy to just bounce off Eddie and he looks completely unfazed and like completely comfortable and like he's on top of it. Their exchanges are a highlight of the movie for sure.
Yeah, and I think that storyline was interesting, and I like that they didn't go stereotypical with it. You know, he did seemingly prove to be a good guy, but
Oh yeah,
we don't really know
guess
because they just
normal,
basically stop that story.
Yeah, because in like a normal 90s, 2000s movie, he'd have proved to be a douchebag and broke her heart, and then Eddie's character would have had to pick up the pieces. Like that's the usual beats of that storyline, right? The dad would have been right to say he wasn't good for her, but in this case, he does just seem like a genuinely nice, respectful guy.
Exactly.
Which is fun.
So yeah, I enjoyed. I wish they'd continued. And you know what? I think all it really needs is a scene between him and Eddie later on, where he does something. Maybe she's very specifically. Oh yeah, this is it. Oh god, it's such a simple fix. Sorry, not that this might not necessarily work. You know, we're not professional writers, but you specifically have her being worried about people thinking she's a freak, which she is worried about, and you specifically relate that to she doesn't know how to tell the boyfriend because she just wants to be normal and just wants to have a normal life, and it's bad enough that she's had to traipse up here to see her and all of this sort of stuff. How's he going to handle this? And then we show her telling him, and he's completely cool with it, and he's loving it. He's like, "What? That's awesome! That's so cool! That's fantastic!" And Eddie watches that scene. You don't even need to do a scene between him and Eddie of making up. You just have Eddie watch that scene. He sees him be supportive. He smiles. It's a slight rewrite of the scene where she tells him, and it's a 30-second scene after that. Like it's easy to do, but anyway. Yeah. So that would have been nice. But otherwise, I echo everything you said about that storyline. The bears. Okay, so if we talk about,
let's talk about
like I said
bears.
earlier. Like I said earlier, and like you said just now, it's ridiculously quick. There's an antagonist where there doesn't need to be one. It's insanely quick. They basically fall in love with one sort of scene / mini montage. The only way you vaguely get away with it is the strength of Lisa Kudrow and Steve Zahn, I think it is. Who are both obviously very good actors.
It could be Zane, but I've always thought it was Zahn. Steve Zahn.
Zahn, okay. They're both very good actors. The scenes where Lisa Kudrow is giggling, and they have an exchange about he's making her laugh in those early scenes, and the chemistry feels good. It does feel it slightly benefits from it being Lisa Kudrow. You're very aware of that the entire time, and have an inherent affection for her and for that voice. But
that was a problem. Sorry, I was just going to say that was a problem for her in BoJack as well. I think.
No, go for it.
She was in BoJack for a while, and it's very hard not to be like, it's Lisa Kudrow. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's taken I think the only Friends. I think maybe now it's less of an issue. Actually, they've all got roles. I think, especially Jennifer Aniston, where I think you think of her as Jennifer Aniston now, as opposed to that Rachel character specifically. But yeah, anyway, that's a tangent.
I think it's just when it's voiced though, because in The Comeback, there was no confusion. I loved her in The Comeback, and in other things she's been in. I for some reason, it's just something about when she gets. Maybe it's because when she gets given voice roles, they're not a million miles away from Phoebe as a character. Whereas, like some of the other acting roles she's taken, have been like her character in The Comeback is nothing like Phoebe. But I wouldn't say her character in BoJack or in this is a million miles away. I'm not saying they're the same. I'm just saying they're I would say they're in the same postcode, even if they're different. Does that make sense? Like there's an adjacent, they're like an adjacent elements. But yeah, anyway, sorry. I apologies for interrupting your flow.
No, go, mate. We are. I just looked at the time we've been recording, and the time starts with a 3. And I feel like we've covered the majority of stuff. So it's just too quick, man. It just like one scene, she's like, no, and the next scene, she's like, oh, actually. And the next scene, she's like in love. And like I say, there are some funny moments, like at the end where they get together and Eddie Murphy's just yelling Archie's name. It's quite, it's quite funny. The stuff there's a portion of this movie where it's a slightly negative thing about its simplicity, where it's just a little like series of mini vignettes. One of them is him going on the ledge to get the honey. And it's quite funny. It shows up the antagonist and I can't remember the other bear boyfriend basically. There's a lot of humor about him getting it, but it feels a bit like it's set up, I believe, but it feels a bit like, well, we need the bear to do something. Let's have him go on a log and a sort of a ledge thing.
They set it up like 2 scenes before where she's like, oh, that no one's ever survived going out there. No one's stupid enough to go out there. It's very dangerous. And he's like, I'm going to do it to prove how much I love you. I'm going to risk my life to prove how much I love you. And I don't think that's necessarily what convinces her necessarily, but no. I do think it's the douchey bear boyfriend. It's his response. It makes her dump him. So it sort of works, but in this sort of weird backwards way, which I think is interesting and certainly not as overt as it could have been in like a worse script. But also, I don't know how like, I don't know, how much do I like that? I don't know. Like it's I guess it's fine, but as you said, it's very quick. There's the scene of them rolling around in the fields, like they're having a good time. Then there's then when she basically laughs at him, he has a cry because he's like, oh, the girl I like laughed at me, and then he does the big brave thing and wins her over. It seems that seems to be the basic beats of it, and it's pretty much it's pretty much not more complicated than I've just described it, which is like I guess
that's the problem.
I guess that's
it's
where
just
like
quick.
Yeah, I guess that's where the movie's simplicity hurts it the most, because it's the plot you would like, because it's the center of the tension of the movie. Will they get them together? Will he convince that bear to be an outdoor bear that can win over the girl? The fact it's resolved so simply actually sort of robs the movie of some tension, and then they have to artificially create more by having the whole device of like, oh, he's been framed for ransacking a store, which is set up earlier in the movie. But like, it is weird because it is weird actually. I'm just about to say this: 2 movies in a row, Chris, where someone is framed for a crime and then we never address how they're unframed for that crime.
No, I realised as well. I don't think we ever gave the plot in a way. He ends up having to. Oh no, I think you did. Yeah,
I think we covered it very briefly
to try and protect the woods. Yeah, you did. Yeah,
because basically they're going to knock down the forest, and the judge is like, there are no protected species in there except for one bear, but one bear can't breed, so there's no point in protecting that. And its habitat, and he's like, well, what if I bring a male bear? And the only male bear that could be a breeding pair with that is one from a circus background, and therefore it's like a performing bear. And the idea of taking a bear that's been in captivity and putting it into the wild, it wouldn't know how to feed itself, look after itself, but he can talk to the animals, so he can solve the problem. But then at the end, when he's pretty much done that, and it's looking like he's gonna succeed, the bad guys, to keep the plot going, trank the bear and then wake it up in the like food storage room of like a cafe or something, like a cafe, and then like I guess it either trashes the place or they trash the place and made it look like that. It's unclear. But then the judges are like, well, the bear got out of control. This is a failed experiment. The logging company gets to go ruin the forest now. Yeah, that's fine. Like it's okay. I mean, I would have rather just continued the tension as being, will they get the bears together? Because the silliest part of the movie, and the part of the movie that's like my least favorite, is that whole montage at the end where all the animals go on strike, because it's just so dumb. Like, I'm not even sure it's dumb enough to be funny. Like, it's so silly. The animals go on strike because the government voted the way they did, and they're going to get all that land.
Yeah, and they then spent quite a bit of time with like the negotiation scenes, comparatively to like, the speed of the bear plot, the fact that the boyfriend disappears. Like quite a bit of time is spent on Kevin Pollak and Eddie Murphy sat around a table negotiating with
a beaver and a possum and stuff. Yeah, it's odd. It's really odd. But like I said, the movie's quite fun. It has a happy ending. Surprise. Anyone shocked by that? I don't think so.
Yeah, I have to say, I think that's the right choice, Dan. Like,
Yeah.
I think it should have a happy ending.
You know, it works out. It works out for everyone. In the end, they all have a good time, and the bears get together, and they have some bear kids, voiced by Mandy Moore and Frankie Muniz for some reason.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about it. Like, were either of those two even famous in 2001, or is that just like a real coincidence that the two people they voice cast for those roles?
Frankie Muniz, but surely that's around Malcolm in the Middle time.
Is it? I'm not sure, because I would maybe. I always think of Malcolm in the Middle as like an early 2000s show, which is when this came out. So I guess let's have a look. Malcolm in the Middle isn't. Okay. It's further up on the list because it ended in 2006, but it started in the year 2000. So yeah, first season of Malcolm in the Middle had happened, but I don't think he was like a big star yet.
Fair. No. That's fair. Yeah, I think I'm with you. I'm trying to think of. Do you think obviously the actress playing his wife, the wife character, and the other daughter, they both had a lot more to do in the first one. Do you think maybe there's a possibility they felt shortchanged, or do you think they are shortchanged?
Well, I don't know, because in the first movie they were like the focus, and the daughter played by Raven-Symoné was like background. So I feel like if I'm a writer or director and I'm like, yeah, we did your story in the last one. Now you're supporting because the story is now focused on this character. I think you got to take that in your stride, right? If you
and also
if it's going to flick back and forth, that's the way it goes, right?
I did like as well that his wife had kind of the opposite view on things. Like, she was a bit more, oh no, we need to trust her. Like, I'm sure this guy's fine. Like, he was a lot more reasonable. She was a lot more reasonable about all of that stuff, which was, again, an angle you don't often see that I enjoyed.
Yeah. And the other daughter had a plot line about helping a chameleon feel less of a shit chameleon.
Which is really important to the movie. Like, that added a lot. We shouldn't understate that.
No.
Like,
the solution to this chameleon that's not good at blending in was to put him in a room that's green.
That did make me laugh.
The only part of that made me kind of chuckle was when he was like, "Can we do the whole house this way?" I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
We should very quickly.
The rest of the voice cast.
Yeah, exactly. I was we did the same. We went for the same topic at the exact same time. The rest of the voice cast, Steven Zahn, Lisa Kudrow, we already talked about, but like Michael Rapport as Joey the raccoon, Isaac Hayes, chef himself, voices the possum, Andy Dick voices the weasel, Joey Lauren Adams voices a squirrel. David Cross voices a dog. John DiMaggio voices a seeing eye dog. Mike Epps voices Sonny. Jamie Kennedy voices Bandit. Tom Kenny of SpongeBob fame voices a male tortoise. Let's have a look. Michael McKean voices a bird. I mean, this is ridiculous. Like, Bob Odenkirk voices animal groupie number 4. That's pretty good. If you told me you're going to pull together a cast for a sequel, and like considering some of the names they had in the first one that came in and provided, very small amounts of voice work, like Ellen DeGeneres was like his childhood dog and stuff, and we were like, oh, that's quite surprising. That's a good cast. That's a pretty good list. And I think they all do a pretty good job. You had a problem in the original, I remember, though, with Chris Rock's character, because you said something like, and sorry if I'm not remembering this correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you never felt like the two actors were engaging with each other. Like, there was always a weird disconnect when Dr. Dolittle was talking to the hamster rather than when he was talking to Lucky. And I suggested maybe Chris Rock filmed his lines after the fact, and maybe the voice actor, Norm Macdonald for Lucky, was on set reading his lines so Eddie and he could, actually bounce off each other, not in front of the camera necessarily, but like when they did Roger Rabbit, the actor that voices Roger Rabbit stood behind the camera saying his lines, so that Hoskins and other actors could react to the delivery specifically. But you did you notice that this time, that any discrepancy between performance where you felt like they were just filmed on separate days and it was like there was a barrier there?
No, I didn't notice that this time. No, not at all. So, I think maybe either it just wasn't, it just didn't feel like that, or there was something about the way they recorded it, like you say. But no, I definitely didn't notice that.
Yeah, I don't.
Did you notice anything like that? I thought sometimes maybe I felt that way a little bit with the Bears. I still think they had good chemistry because they're both such good actors. But I think if there was any kind of disconnect, it would be, I'm not entirely sure with the Bears they had good chemistry or that was particularly edited well. I just think you accidentally cast two of the best comedic actors around at the time.
I think you're right, because like it did feel a little bit like they weren't quite reacting to each other as naturally as they would normally, and it did make me wonder if they were filmed, their voice lines were recorded separately.
Yeah, because this is, what year did you say?
2001.
So Friends is still, this is like series 7 of Friends. 2, 3, 4, series 7 of Friends. That's mad.
And I'll be honest with you, Lisa Kudrow has enough lines in this movie, or a few enough lines in this movie, that honestly you wouldn't even need her for a full day.
No.
You'd bring her in, feed her. Maybe you've already recorded Steve Zahn's lines, and you just play her the scenes and she just responds, which might create a disconnect, but that might be how they did it. We should talk about the effects, because I remember complimenting and stand by complimenting the effects in the first movie. I think it's pretty good, especially considering, I don't know if you recall, the ultimate piece of trivia, that Eddie Murphy is terrified of pretty much all animals, and had to be composited into almost any shot with an animal later, because he, especially the bigger ones, because he just couldn't. He was too scared to do it, which is fair enough. Like, I wouldn't want to be, even with a trainer around, too close to a tiger. You know what I mean? Like, or a bear.
He hugs a bear in this one. Like,
yeah. So I'm not. This is not a judgment call. This is just. It's just funny to think, because I think what we said at the time, which is fair, I think, is don't take the role. Like, it's Dr. Dolittle. If you're really scared of animals, then maybe don't take the Dr. Dolittle role. Or maybe you didn't read the script. I don't know. Anyway. So what I remember saying last time was I thought the animals looked really good because they just got real animals, filmed them, and then you moved their mouths afterwards with computer effects. And as a result, they had the right weight, they moved, everything was right. Whereas if you entirely CGI'd them, that would have looked like the Jon Favreau Lion King, where they're all weird and floaty in scenes. In this movie, I think they cheated a bit more with the mouths. Because I think what they did in the first movie was they actually got them to move their mouths, filmed that, and then it was they got the real movement of a mouth, and then they sort of edited it to make it talk like talking, flap it, sort of by doing the footage backwards and forwards, essentially, like around the mouth, like using that to sort of create that blend. Whereas Babe, the Babe films had just used fully CGI mouths to make the filming easier. So it seems by the time we got to Dr. Dolittle 2, they decided to follow the same suit. So I don't think the mouth movements are as good in this movie, because I think a few of them are CGI mouths. Not all, maybe, but like a chunk, for sure. And I don't like that choice, but otherwise I think the special effects really hold up. There's definitely a couple of scenes where we can tell Eddie has been composited in, and a couple of the locations are very clearly green screens. But I think it mostly holds up from a special effects perspective, which, considering the age of the movie and the nature of the film, is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it works. I think they made a lot of clever story choices, because I think what helps that is the simplicity of the story, and the fact that it's in the woods, it's in nature. Mm-hmm. So even if you're having to digitally insert any of the animals, you're going to be able to make a dog in a field and a forest look more natural than a dog in New York City. Like I just think it's, and most of the animals are native to the forest, so it works. And a lot of the scenes, the animals are talking to each other. There's a lot of Eddie talking to animals, but I reckon if it's similar to how the Fast and Furious movies are all about family, but if you break down the last few in particular, Vin Diesel's Dom doesn't spend a lot of time talking to his family. Like, he's got a scene with Han in the latest one, and like a lot of scenes with Letty. Other than that, there's not a lot of time that Vin is actually interacting with those other characters. And I think it's a similar thing here. Yeah, the movie's full of him talking to animals, but I'm willing to bet if you went through and looked for the volume of scenes where you see him talking to the animals, and both of them are in shot, it's not just, the angle at the animal on its own or Eddie. I reckon actually that number of scenes is actually quite low.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Maybe.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably. I'm just thinking about that. I think you're right. I think there's a lot more animals talking to each other than talking to him. But like, there's no way this was an easy movie to shoot, and the temptation to make it way cheaper and way easier by doing CGI completely would have absolutely been there. And I really respect that they chose not to do that.
Yeah, and I think they talk to the character a lot. I just think what I mean very specifically is I think if you look at those scenes, if you think about that scene at the beginning where he's walking down the corridor and he's talking to both the dog and his assistant, most of that will be a close-up on Eddie and a close-up on the dog.
Yeah.
Like, I doubt there's a lot of them literally talking to each other.
Yes, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I think that's right. I don't know if I have anything else to talk about this. Oh, well, wait. There was one note that I did have. Where is that? Oh yeah, let's do our accidental segment. It's a kids' movie, so you shouldn't question this stuff. But this world makes no sense. A segment that appears in most of our family movie reviews. So, like, the most recent example, this would be Toy Story. When you start to ask too many questions about, like, can the toys eat? Do the toys, like, why do some of the toys seem to not know their toys? You start asking those questions and you open a bit of a black hole into, like, more questions with potentially dark answers. But let me posit one for you for this movie, Chris, right? This movie does an interesting thing, which is it opens up with the world knowing Dr. Dolittle can talk to animals. Like, he's famous now, right? And I don't mind that as a plot beat for him. That's fine. It's an interesting progression of his character. It means that we're not forcing all the comedy to be him talking to an animal and a person walks by on the street like, what's going on here? That's weird. He's talking to an animal. We don't have to do jokes like that anymore because the world has kind of accepted he exists. But in a world where everyone now knows and understands that animals are intelligent beings capable of thought and feelings, do they still eat meat?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The implications of the world discovering animals are like intelligent, sentient beings with thoughts and feelings are not at all dealt with in these movies. And that's fine. But it does open up a wormhole of shit that you don't want to think about.
It does, but equally, and I'm part of the problem here. I'm not denying that. Equally, Dan, they're literally like, guys, if we stopped eating meat, we might be able to save the planet a little easier. And still people are like, yeah, but tastes good, doesn't it? Like, who doesn't like a hamburger? Like, so there's already quite a few good arguments not to eat meat, isn't there? Like, and we're still doing it.
That's true. But I guess eating meat is like the start of a wider question of like, is no one like what's been the impact on like is it people starting to question if it's moral to keep pets or like keep the animals that are in captivity? Like, why are more questions arising about that? Because I think a lot of the time those sorts of questions get dismissed by people who are just like, well, they're just animals, they don't think, they don't feel, they don't care, like, which is not true, I don't think. But I also don't think they're capable of the complex thought these movies posit. But if we discovered they had these complex thoughts, do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like we would have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I agree.
Like,
I see what you're saying.
I feel like I feel like the world would be quite shocked at these revelations, and the story would not have been about saving a portion of wood, but actually hearings happening with Dr. Dolittle, where scientists ask him his opinions on all sorts of things. I'm being... Okay, I'm now being chastised by two cockatoos who are raising up their head feather thing and flapping out the window. They might be about to screech. I might have to quickly step out and throw a bit of seed down for them. Because they are giving me the evilest eyes right now. So yeah. But my point is, there's a lot that this world should be dealing with and isn't. And I think that's very interesting. I'm going to go talk to some cockatoos.
Yeah, it sounds like animals, Dan's talking about, if we do, they could think maybe we wouldn't eat them, and then he's like, the cockatoos are essentially threatening him with a screech. So it sounds like they have that already. I think the list of things that a Dr. Dolittle sequel should actually be addressing after the first film, including having him, just the fact that more people aren't like, fucking hell, really? You're the guy? You're the one that talks to animals? Like, it's like you say, it's a kids movie. But which, obviously I know you're acknowledging it's the name of this segment. But yeah, no, definitely there are a list of things that should be addressed that are like Dan. How can there seemingly be a hospital where he's treating both animals and people? Like, from a sort of sanitary point of view, that doesn't seem wise.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good point, actually. Because in the first movie, it's necessity. He's a people doctor, and he sneaks the animals in to work on them because they're dying, they're sick, right? The tiger, particularly, he does surgery at the end. It's like it's the only way he's going to help that tiger. But I'm thinking about, like, in this movie, do we establish he does have a doctor's? Like, that's doing both?
In that first scene, he's being given like things to do and spoken to about appointments for both humans and animals.
Yeah, so then that's like, yeah, okay, yeah, like, you're right, that doesn't make sense because again, first movie necessity. So yeah, this is one of those things where it's like, you know what? It's a kids' movie. Don't think about it. But like, genuinely,
it's also thinking about it. It's also not. Sorry to interrupt. It's also not the best use of that power. Realistically, if he was a doctor that could actually talk to animals, he wouldn't be performing these surgeries. What would realistically be happening is there would be 20 rooms in a hospital, all of whom's got a vet in, all of whom's got an animal in, and he would be going into those rooms one by one, and he would be identifying what the problem is for the other vet to then treat.
Yeah. That would be the way more efficient way to use his abilities. Yeah. Agreed. And there was I can't remember who it was, but some I don't know, some philosopher or someone once said that, like, even if a lion could speak English, you still wouldn't understand it, or something to that effect. Being that, like, the frames of reference between an animal and a human would be so different that even with a shared language, the experience would be enough of a gulf that you'd never be able to make sense of what each other was saying. And I think there's, like, that's, again, a question this movie is absolutely not ever going to be interested in answering. But it is interesting that they have frames of reference. Like, it's a bit like the genie in Aladdin, where he's, like, referencing pop culture, and you're like, aren't you an ancient genie from thousands of... What do you mean you're doing an Arnold Schwarzenegger impression? Like, how do these animals know about, like human traditions? I guess if they're smart enough, maybe they'd be picked up on them, like, over time, but, like, it's just interesting. Like, they know about human things. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, that's the end of the Don't Question It segment. Don't question it, it's a kids movie. There's not a lot of Triv, but shall we, unless you've got anything else? Oh, we should do overall, it's a perfectly adequate family film. You'll laugh a couple times. It's an easy breezy watch. It's inoffensive. It's not a masterpiece, but it's also not crap. which I'm surprised is the answer. But yeah, that is the answer.
Yes, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think if you've seen the first one and you want to throw something on a Sunday afternoon, or you've got a family, like, go for it.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's 8 a.m. for me, so do you want to do it? Do you want to do the thing?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, yeah, for anyone who's listening to Rewind Reviews and hasn't heard the most recent season of Korra to understand why we're doing it this round, we have... we're on different time zones now because I'm in Australia. So if it's too early in the morning for Chris to do Triv It Up, we switch. Because he doesn't want to disturb.
Well, I think I've been pretty loud in general today, so I think that's. I've not really been watching my volume, so because it's like quite light. Well, so it's maybe less aware of it. But anyway, still, we'll have you do it.
Yeah. Let's Triv It Up.
I'm going to give you some trivia.
There it is. Yes, today's thing. All right. So the original director, Barry Thomas, did not return for DD2. I couldn't find out any reason why, but I think in this time period, it was a bit considered beneath you to do a sequel. No one liked doing sequels. The reputation of sequels was poor. We weren't living in the franchise world now, where a sequel is a thing you're after. Sequels were generally considered sort of dead on arrival. So instead they hired Steve Carr to direct it. He'd only made music videos and one feature film up to that point, 2000's Ice Cube vehicle Next Friday, which I've never seen, and looks kind of fun from the poster, but I don't know a lot about it. The writing team from the first one pretty much stuck around, though. Hugh Lofting and Larry Levin, who wrote on the first one, stuck around. There was one other writer on the first one that did not return, whose name I don't appear to have written down because I'm a piece of shit. But you can Google it. just Google the first one. But yeah, there was one writer that didn't return, basically. So generally, the way they made this movie, and most of this trivia is just how they did the animals. And I cut out so much of that because there was just so much. Not all of it's very interesting. A trainer coaxed an animal with a treat across a thing. Whatever. Generally, though, when there were a large number of animals in the scene together, like the animals rallying in the woods, individual species had to be filmed separately using a technique called motion control, which is actually a technique pioneered for Back to the Future, where a camera would be set up and it would run robotically through a scene with precision, moving through the scene. And they would film it once with the camera moving through like that with one set of animals in it. And they would remove that animal, put in the next animal. The camera would repeat the move precisely as it did the first time. And then you could overlay all the images. It's pretty cool. They're all brought to their marks by trainers. And then, you could sort of edit the complete scene together. Sorry, I just realized, I said sorry, you won't have known why I hit my mic. Chris, you were probably thinking, what's Dan just apologised for? So yeah,
no worries.
When complete, it looks like the camera pans through a single area filled with all manner of wildlife, standing in harmony, but actually none of them were together. Obviously, we had to be very careful making this movie because of predator-prey situations. One scene had so many animals that were going to be in and out in various points. In fact, it might have even been partly that one, where 45 different animal trainers had to be present to provide adequate care for the animals, but also to avoid certain animals coming into proximity with each other. So yes, there was also some use of animatronics, blue screen, split screen, and digital effects that used to help bring it all together. I noticed that on Ava, that's Lisa Kudrow's bear, there was a big animatronic version of that bear that they used for some scenes. And I thought it looked pretty bad, if I'm being honest. But they got away with it. So it's fine. I'd still rather animatronic over a CG. So,
absolutely.
Archie and Ava playing in at the lake, right, this is one of my favorite things. This was just actually a thing that they did. They took the two bears, they found a meadow, they sort of guarded it off so, passers-by couldn't wander into it. They found the greens, they placed a bunch of cameras, They also wired it up so that if a wire got tripped, they'd know where they were and the right camera would be on. And then they just let them frolic. They just released the two bears.
That's brilliant.
And they let them play, and they just filmed it. And I think what's really nice about that is they were smart enough to know that obviously they wouldn't want the bears to then just wander off. So they had trainers nearby with treats in canoes off to the side in the lake that, should the bears decide to wander. But they didn't, because they were having too much fun. They stuck around anyway. They didn't try to wander.
I love the idea of that. I think that's brilliant to just be like, here you go, like to the bears. I love that.
Yeah, I thought that was very sweet and very fun. And I like that a lot. And I like that they put some voices over it, but very look who's talking, because you can't see the mouths moving. It's from a distance, but it's charming enough. Works well. So Steve Zahn, who voices Archie, later co-starred with Eddie Murphy in Daddy Daycare. But weirdly, he had already appeared on Friends as the ex-husband of Phoebe. He is the gay ice dancer that Phoebe married, I think, for a green card.
Of course.
And of course, so that means that, Steve Zahn and Lisa Kudrow have played love interests of a sort more than one time. I think that's fun. That one I've already read. It's in here twice because of a copy and paste snafu. So we'll just move on. So Archie getting the honey was quite a tricky one to film, from what I understand. The bear was guided up a ramp that led to a log stretched out in front of a blue screen. The trainer used hand signals to get the bear to crawl, lay, sit down, raise its paws, and play peekaboo on the log. Later in post-production, the blue screen was obviously then turned into the whole cliffside that they'd previously filmed, but the bear's actions were there. But I'm glad they were able to do that in a much safer environment than it kind of appeared on camera. Because we don't want a bear trying to actually do that. That would be stupid and dangerous.
Agreed.
The bear that played Archie had a stunt double. You'll be happy to hear, Chris. So when we first see him, Archie is shown riding a bike across the stage during one of the performances. A special seat was built onto the scooter to accommodate the bear, who was larger than the average rider of a scooter. Archie was placed on the seat by a trainer and told to stay. This was filmed, and then the bear was removed by the trainer. Then Smithy, a performance bear that has lots of scooter experience, became Archie's stunt double that was brought into the film for the scene, and then rode across the stage. Then the trainer took that bear out of the seat, replaced it with Archie, and that's how they got the last shot. A different bear was the one who rode across the stage. I'm kind of impressed that was a real bear they had riding across the stage, to be honest with you.
I was thinking that. I was like, that seems fairly bold to me.
Yeah. Again, I do admire for a sequel the effort they went to on production on this one with the animals and using real animals rather than just going, it'd be cheaper to do CGI, wouldn't it? So when Archie was tranquilized and fell unconscious, you'll be glad to know he once again had a stunt stand-in, but it was this time a stunt man in a bear suit that actually doubled for Archie and took the trank dart. He woke up about 6 hours later, perfectly healthy. Okay, I'm kidding. That last part I made up. It wasn't a real trank dart. Couldn't resist. Sorry. I
was like, that seems quite contradictory to their approach for the rest of it.
Yeah. They got a guy in a bear suit and really tranked him. When Archie is foraging outside the cabin to get the grapes from the tree, trying to get the grapes from the tree blindfolded and falls down into the basement. The trainer stood on a platform to cue Tank, which I think is the name of the bear that played Archie, from off camera. Then it tied one of Tank's favourite toys up in the tree, and it naturally tried to get it down to play. The following shot is a stuntman in a bear suit falling down the steps. So it's that's also a guy. That's probably the same guy. Probably the same day they tranked him, to be honest. Jesus
You're really
Christ.
pleased with yourself, aren't you?
I just don't know what I like. If you were to ask the listeners right now if they didn't already know which of us was like recording this early in the morning and which of us wasn't, if we hadn't already given it away, they'd be guessing it's me that's in the morning.
Yeah, I got in late as well. I've had like 4 hours sleep.
You're doing well. You're doing well.
Anyway.
So Dr. Dolittle tells
Thank
Dr. Dolittle tells his daughter, "You're welcome." That crickets are nature's thermometer, which he never really gives context for. He just says you can tell the temperature from their chirping. But apparently, this is a real thing. According to the Farmer's Almanac, you can count the chirps for 14 seconds, then add 40 to that number. That will give you the temperature in Fahrenheit. Bizarre.
Okay.
And if you're thinking, Chris, you're thinking, well, Dan, but what if I want to know the temperature in Celsius? Well, for Celsius, rather than just get the Fahrenheit number and convert it, what you could do is count the chirps for 25 seconds, divide by 3, and then add 4 for the temperature in Celsius.
Why would you not convert it?
You'd convert it.
I suppose you could. Yeah, no one's saying you can't convert it. They're just saying you could also do this.
Yeah. They are. Very strange. When Mr. Potter, played by Jeffrey Jones, calls the operator and asks for the number for Dr. Dolittle, he says, "Not Stuart Little, Dolittle." Ironically, Jeffrey Jones, that actor who played that role of Mr. Potter, was his uncle Crenshaw in Stuart Little from 1999. So he played. That line was very much in the script, knowing he'd been in Stuart Little.
Well, I look forward to the next piece of triv. Speaking of Potter, Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe wore 127 pairs of glasses when he played Harry Potter.
No. Freckles, who played Pongo in 101 Dalmatians and its sequel 102 Dalmatians, makes a brief cameo as one of the animals that goes on strike. So if you saw the Dalmatian in this movie, that's the Dalmatian that they used as the lead star in the 101 Dalmatians and 102 Dalmatians movies. That dog kept busy.
Yeah, had a good career, didn't it? Fair play.
101, of course, is 59 away from 160, which is, of course, the number of glasses Daniel Radcliffe went through when shooting the Harry Potter movies. We got there in the end.
Hate to disappoint.
There's one piece of trivia that's so dark, I genuinely didn't put it in.
Jesus.
But it's so like... Okay. It's one of those things that's so bizarre, and I've heard comedians make jokes about this fact before. And it okay, I'm just going to say it because I just don't know how else to approach this. Dr. Dolittle 2 was the in-flight film for the 2 American Airlines planes that were hijacked on September the 11th, 2001. Now, I've heard comedians go, didn't they suffer enough, in relation to this movie? But let me tell you, this movie is not that bad to make jokes like that, I don't think. The movie is pretty inoffensive as it goes. And I actually think, at least the people on those fucking planes' kids would have been happy and quiet. That's what I'm going to say. Because this is a perfectly fine...
What was the other film?
No, it was the in-flight film for the 2 American Airlines planes that were hijacked.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said it was one of 2 in-flight.
No.
Sorry.
So there were 2 American Airlines planes hijacked, the AA-11 and the AA-77. Yeah. They both had this movie as their in-flight entertainment.
Right, I'm with you.
Super dark, but I think interesting. It's a weird fact about this film's history.
Piece of history, yeah.
It's
horrific.
It's time for it's awful. Obviously, no one wants to do a light podcast lightly jabbing at Dr. Dolittle 2. Which, by the way, I think if we were to compare the 2 podcasts, I think we've been more generous and kind to Dr. Dolittle 2 than we were to Dr. Dolittle 1. Genuinely.
Well, I think it's less inoffensive. I genuinely think it's more inoffensive. Like,
Yeah. I still think the first one's probably technically a better movie in that like the joke rate is higher.
oh yeah, of course.
But yeah, there's less to be bothered about or annoyed about in this movie, I think. Anyway, it's time for everyone's favourite segment. Cars exist. That was a great car noise this week, Chris.
Thank you.
That was top tier. That was top tier.
I appreciate it. I thought the same about yours. I really did.
I appreciate that. But I genuinely, my head went from left to right. Like I've sort of followed the sound. Like you convinced me of its...
Oh, what, of my noise, of yours?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, of yours, yeah. You convinced me of the car's position in 3D space. From thousands of miles away.
Which is what I'm aiming to do every time. That's the goal. That's the dream.
Yeah. Oh, you did a good job. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, John drives two cars in this movie for some reason. Not sure why. One is a 1998 Land Rover Series 2, specifically a Range Rover, a P38A, and he drives a 2000 Ford Mustang GT, the SN95. So there you go.
There you go. Cars exist.
Cars exist.
We're there.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm very excited to know. Where are we going next, Dan?
Yeah, so again, for those who aren't aware, we're doing a sequel season. Chris and I each have one choice left before we then go into our previously agreed trilogy that we're going to do for this season, which is, of course, the Star Wars prequel trilogy, which I'm very much looking forward to tackling. Just weirdly seminal movies, I think. Very important movies for how people in the modern day analyze and criticize movies. So I'm very excited to talk about those. But we've each got one choice left first. I suspect Chris is going to make his final choice using the wheel. I'm not certain of that, but I do think he might. Mm-hmm. I have ruled out any more legacy sequels. You'll be happy to hear. So no Jumanji 2, no Matrix 4. I just think we did too many of them this series or Good Burger 2 to justify doing any more of them. We should do them another time.
And I think, and that's been quite accidental. We felt Indiana Jones 5 was owed. We just chose Avatar 2. I think we just to say on Jumanji 2, I think we are both surprised. Like if we were to look at that list, I think both of us would go, be surprised that we didn't choose Jumanji 2. I think that was a low-hanging fruit we were looking forward to, but it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a handful left that I'm looking forward to, but I think of the other two, I'm hoping to do. So there are. I mean, technically, there are 4 films that I would want to do of the remaining list. Like, we'll be happy to do, like, excited to do now on this list. I won't give it away, but I am of those films. I think 3 of them would very easily be your next choice. Could easily be your next choice. So I'm going to choose the film I don't think...
But I might use the wheel, though, Dan.
You might use the wheel, but if I remove one choice that would be mine off there, though, then we're leaving you with those movies still anyway. So I'm going to take off the board a movie I would be very excited to see again. Not seen it in a long time. A sequel to one of our earliest reviews, and that's not Space Jam 2, which is obviously would be our earliest. And that is Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, which I know you're not particularly going to be thrilled to cover, I don't think, but I'm
looking forward to Bill and Ted too.
It's a really great movie. It's a bunch of fun. It's one of those sequels that like absolutely understood the assignment. A bit like Gremlins 2, where it's just kind of like not like Gremlins 2. Nothing's like Gremlins 2, but it like didn't feel restrained by the first one to, just play by the same rules. It sort of felt confident enough to just do something kind of different, and I love that. I love it for it. I think I'm not certain. I'd have to have a real think about it, but there's a possibility that I saw Bill and Ted 2 before I saw Bill and Ted 1, because I think I stumbled across Bill and Ted through TV showings, if memory serves. But that's what I'm going to go with, because I think of the other movies that I'm interested in otherwise covering, I think you'll choose if you're choosing, depending on whether you use the wheel or not, I think the other three movies I was considering are all on your like radar.
What were they? Just so we know.
Do we want to know? Because so that I mean, if you're asking that, then that tells me that you really are like you really are doing the wheel. I think is what that tells me.
I think I probably will do the wheel. Yeah, I said that last time. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I think Fast and Furious 2. I feel like that was a real thing you might choose. Hot Fuzz is a real thing I think you might choose. And what was the other one that I was like, I'd be happy to do it? Oh, Mr. Bean's Holiday out of curiosity, because I think we're both intrigued as to how that works. So that one's not so much because we think it's a good one, but like just because on the grounds of like, I think we're both kind of in a place where we're like, oh, that would be an interesting choice. Even if not necessarily a movie we would, be happy to throw on tomorrow. So yeah, there was another one I thought about, but again, this is another Chris would potentially choose it, which is Final Destination 2. That's another one that I think is on your radar as one you're leaning at doing. Yeah,
they're on the wheel. Yeah, for sure.
They're on the wheel. Yeah. So Bill and Ted: Bogus Journey. Why not? It's again one of our earliest reviews. I think just at the start of our second season. I think it was like episode 11 or 12. Very excited about it. Lots to love about the idea. Pumped. Very pumped.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. That's I'm looking forward to it, and also I'm very intrigued by Bill and Ted 3, which obviously we might do one day, but it won't be this season's legacy sequel. We've already got multiple films planned, but I'm excited to watch the second one because it will give me the opportunity to watch the third one, which I might just watch and then if we do it at some point.
Yeah, I think the third one was the third one was one of those movies that was like absolutely just like not attempting in any way, shape, or form to be for anyone other than fans of the first two. And I actually there's definitely I don't think we appreciate enough anymore movies that just like know what audience they're for and don't try to broaden themselves to get this mystical audience that exists beyond who people who already like what you're doing. I think Kevin Smith talks about this a lot with his movies. Like he's got a very particular audience and they like what he does. And he's like, I'll just keep doing that. I don't know why I need to make my movies different to appeal to a crowd that are never going to come to my movies. And I think he's right. And I think he's particularly been like something like Bill and Ted 3 is like really proof of that, because it was literally, to me, that movie is just like, do you like Bill and Ted? Here's a movie for you, like you specifically. Like I don't think it's a masterpiece or anything, but like they were very much not attempting to start a new franchise or reinvigorate the franchise in a way where it's like, let's make it really accessible to the broad market. So yeah, I think the third one is definitely an interesting film to discuss, but that is not what we're covering.
It was one of our
Go on.
No, it was. I was just gonna say it was one of our biggest compliments of Good Burger 2. I think never for me as a movie felt so like we're making this for fans of Good Burger 1. Like it was such a specific audience, that movie.
It really was.
It was crazy.
It really was.
It was mad. It was crazy.
So with all that in mind, we do outro stuff. Oh yeah, you can get us on Patreon. You can listen to that episode where we talk about Bogus Journey right now. For as little as $1 a month. You can also, of course, send us messages and contact us in various ways. And also, if you're doing it through the YouTube, that comments help support the channel because they're engagement. You can get us mail at nothingbutstatic.co.uk if you wish to send us your thoughts. Also benefits to the people who do join us on the Patreon is access to our podcast, Nothing But Lyrics, which is an exclusive podcast that's supposed to be once a month, but we cocked up for February, so we're gonna have to do 2 in March, I think. Which is when we're recording this. If your listeners are not aware, this is like the 5th of March or something like that. Where are we? Yeah, there you go, 5th of March. So yeah, I'm sorry, my brain's clearly dying. I've clearly been doing this for too long today. So yeah, those are all the places you can get us. I don't know, Twitter or stuff. I don't know, we don't use that anymore. You'll find us. Google us. You'll find us there. We also have Nothing But Static, our main podcast, where we talk about TV and such. That's everything for this week. I'm going to pass over to Chris because clearly my brain has decided to switch off in the last 5 minutes. Pretty much the minute I stopped the trivia, my brain went, "Oh, okay, I can rest," and I've just been talking shite ever since. So I'm going to stop there.
I just love how essentially that intro was like, look, if you want to find us hard enough, you'll find us. Don't worry about it.
I started by talking about the Patreon. It's patreon.com/anythingmysstatic, but yeah, my brain switched off. I tried.
It's fine. It's all good. Why not? I'm Chris Billingham.
I'm Dan Doolan.
I mean, your name, Dan. Like, I accept, but all you had to do there was name yourself.
I did it. I said it.
There was a pause. There was a beat where you...
I'll be honest with you, Chris. I didn't want to say this, but I think we've had a massive lag for like most of this podcast. So I didn't want to point it out, but...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, my bad. Right. Well, hopefully that hasn't caused issues. My name's Chris Billingham.
My name's Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.